Alright, so once you're going to open your Unity editor, it's going to look something like this. Okay? Um, on the left, you will see that, but first of all, like you will be greeted with different windows. There will be this hierarchy window, there will be this scene window, there will be this inspector window, there will be this project window, and we'll go into all of these windows in a little while. So starting with the first one, which is your scene window, this scene window is basically telling you anything that you're going to see in your game, right? Anything that you want to place in your game, that is going to go into the scene window. Um, to move to zoom in and zoom out, you can go on your mouse cursor, and you can go towards your scroll in. If you do scroll in, you will zoom in. If you want to scroll out, then you can do uh, your your scroll outwards. If you want to rotate your scene, then you will press your scroll wheel, and then this hand is going to come in, and then you're going to move your mouse around. So not exactly rotation, but moving. And if you want to rotate your screen, then you would press your right click on your mouse, and then you can rotate your scene. And you can also see that this is also showing you that how your scene is being rotated. Okay. So um, once you know how to go around things, right? You know how to zoom in and how to move and everything. The next thing would be to play around with the hierarchical window. So whenever you're going to open a new Unity project, you will be greeted with two game objects. In this, any object that we're going to place in our Unity scene is going to be called a Unity game object. So the two game objects that you're going to have are going to be called main camera, which is basically telling you what what is going to be shown into the game, and I will explain you what the main camera does and what all are all of these properties in a little while. And the other game object that you will be greeted with would be the directional light. So again, we'll get into this in a little while. Um, so let's start with creating something very basic, and we're going to create a cube. So to create a cube, you will go towards your hierarchical window space, somewhere in the empty space, and you're going to right click, and then you're going to go to your 3D object, and then hit a cube. So this is going to create a cube. So just to show you what is being shown in the game, I'm going to take this window and I'm going to drag it out and dock it towards the right. So you can see the camera is basically is capturing all of this information. This outline, the white outline that you're seeing over here, that is everything that the camera can see. So if I take this cube and I move this, you can see that's being reflected in this game window as well. And if I remove it from the view of the camera, it will no longer be rendered in the game. So anything that I want to place in my scene, in my game, that will be in the scene window. And if I want that object to be displayed in the actual game, then it should be in the presence of the camera. Okay, so pretty simple, nothing too much advanced as of now. Again, I would encourage you guys to play around with this, move around, and yeah, just have fun. So the next thing that we're going to get into are going to be different maneuvers. So you can, if you want to move a 3D object, you're going to click on that object in the scene window, and you're going to get different tools on your left. So the first tool is obviously going to be your move tool. So you can move your cube in the Y direction, in the X direction, and in the Z direction. If you want to rotate your object, then you can also rotate it by going to your rotate tool over here, and you can rotate it in the X direction, in the I think so. Wait, let me just reset this. So 0 0 0. Okay, so in the Z direction, and you can see it's being rotated in the Z direction and also in the X direction and in the Y direction as well. So let's just bring this back to the default. Now, and you can also scale your objects. So when I'm going to hit on the scale tool, I can scale it in the Y direction, in the Z direction, or in the X direction. Or if I want to do it in all dimensions together, then I can do this by selecting this middle gray box and then just dragging out. So that's going to zoom in all directions, and I can also bring it back to zoom to make it smaller. Okay, so and the first thing that you're going to notice is when I was messing with these properties, right? When I was messing with the movement and the rotation and the scaling, there was something popping out on the right screen in the inspector window, right? So if I select nothing, the inspector window is empty. But when I'm going to select a game object, it just shows a lot of different properties in your inspector. Similarly, when I go to my main camera, it's going to show me a lot of different properties. So what are these properties? Let's dive into this. So whenever we're going to select a game object, right? How do we know what is the position of a game object, right? So you don't have any information as to where this object is. You don't know what is the rotation of that object. You don't know what is the size of that object. So all of that information is going to be displayed in the inspector window. So in the inspector window, let me just close all of these tabs and just focus on the transform property. The transform property is mostly responsible for three things: the position of a game object, the rotation, and the scale. So when I was moving my game object in the scene window, you can see that the position is being reflected over here. If I want to manually change the X position, I can either drag out by just moving my mouse on or hovering my mouse on the X part and then clicking and then just dragging. So it can do that as well. Or I can manually enter my values. So let's assume I want to put my cube at the position 3. So it just snaps it right to that position of 3. And then I have my Y component and my Z component and so on and so forth. So now let's take a look at the rotation. I can also rotate it and I can also scale it over here as well. And if I move my scale tool, you can see that it's also being reflected over here. Okay, so let's start again. If you want to create a cube, we're going to go to your sample over here, your hierarchy window. You're going to right click and then 3D object and then cube. If you want to delete a game object like I just did, you can just press the delete key on your keyboard. So not over here, but over here, delete key, it gets removed. If you want to undo something, it's the same principle, Control Z to bring it back. Okay, so let's start with discussing some of the properties that we have over here. So the first property that you're going to see is the transform. You can also see these other properties, which is the tag, the layers, what is static, and all of these bunch of properties, which we're not going to get into right now, but we will be discussing all of this as we progress. So if you want to change the name of your game object, you can do it in two ways. Either you can do it in the inspector window by calling this, let's assume, a box. And you can see that's also being reflected in your hierarchy as well. You can also right click on your game object in the hierarchy window and you can go to your rename and it's going to rename as well. Or you can just click on this box object and press F2 and now you can name it whatever you want. So I'll call it box for now. Okay. So that's how you're going to rename your game objects. That's how you're going to create your game objects and how to move, rotate, and scale and all of that stuff has been discussed. Now let's take a look at the Box Collider component. So when I'm going to open my Box Collider window over here, there's an option, there's like different options, which I'm not going to get into right now. But again, we are going to discuss this as we progress. But the one thing that I wanted to show you guys was the Edit Collider option. So if you want to zoom in very quickly on your game object, you can press F. Select a game object and press F. So if I go to my main camera and press F, I can just quickly see where it is. And if I go back to my cube, that's how you do it, by pressing the F key. So if I look at this game object very carefully, when I press this Edit Collider, you can see, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's this green outline. And what this green outline basically means is that when another object is going to collide with this is the boundary of this game object. And to show this in like real time, if you can understand what I'm saying, is I'm going to now create a sphere and show this what this Box Collider does. So first I'm going to create a game object in my hierarchy. The way how we do that is by right clicking, 3D object, and this time we're going to select a sphere. And then we're going to move the sphere a little bit above over here. So let's just zoom out over here. And for now, we're going to add another component. So we're over here in the inspector, we went to add component and we're going to add rigid body. Again, just go with the flow right now. I will explain what is the rigid body in just 2 seconds, but just go with the flow right now. So I added a rigid body component to my sphere. And now what you will see is, wait, let me just decrease the size a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. And once I'm going to play, if I'm going to hit this play button over here, this is actually going to play the game. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to hit play. And you can see it just falls down and it basically is colliding with this cube object. Let's increase the size a little bit more and let's see what happens now. Okay, it just sits on top of that. Let's displace it a little bit and see what happens now. So it falls down, nothing happens. A little bit more towards the left, maybe. I just want it to fall off somehow. Okay, and it falls off. So you can see it basically collided with this edge over here, with this edge, and then it fell off. So the reason as to why I was showing you the Box Collider was you can actually change this boundary. So if I hit the Edit Collider over here, and if I change this to something like expand its region over here, and now when, again, let me just increase it a little bit more. Now if I hit play, as you saw before, it just hit with the cube and it just fell off, right? So now see what happens. It just stays down. It's pretty weird, but it's weird is because we changed its boundary, its colliding boundary. So you can see it's almost as if it's sitting on the top of this invisible wall. So that's what the Edit Collider does. Now coming back to the part where I was talking about what is a rigid body and why I added a rigid body to a sphere. A rigid body is a component you can add to a game object which will allow physics to be rendered. Okay, so you can see that when I was hitting play, the sphere was basically moving down as if it was falling with the influence of gravity, but there was no physics being implemented on the cube. It was as if it was just stuck in the space. So in the cases when you want some physics to be applied to your game objects, you would always want to go to your game object, go to add component and add a rigid body component to it. Similarly, if for some reason, if you don't have a box collider, let's assume that I remove this component. So I went to this, went up and then to this three dot thingy, and then I remove this component, and now I don't have a box collider. And if I want to add a box collider, I can just go to add component, type box collider, and voila, I have my box collider added back to my cube. So let's take a look at a bit of these rigid body properties in detail. So I'm just going to go with two properties right as of now, and then we're going to discuss the other properties afterwards when we will be needing it. So if you want to increase how fast an object is going to fall down, we can change it by changing its mass. So let's show this in real time. Let's do this as 1 and increase the height and hit play. So it falls down and then it falls down like that. And let's increase it by 10 and then let's hit it again. And now you can see it falls down a bit faster, a bit faster. Let's do this about 1,000 maybe. Maybe that way it might fall down faster. No, it doesn't have any effect. But yeah, if you want to change the mass of an object, you can change it by over here. I think it's like reaching its terminal velocity a bit faster. That's the reason why it's not falling faster. Anyways, so this is the mass property. We're not usually messing with the mass. And there's also the use gravity option as well. So if I want to apply some sort of physics to it, but I don't want to apply gravity, I can just uncheck this, and now if I hit play, it's also going to just stay right in the scene. It's not going to move downwards or fall downwards. But if I hit this thing, it's now magically has the gravity property. Okay, so that was all for rigid body. Okay, so we've discussed how to move an object, how to apply physics to an object. And now let's discuss a bit more about this mesh thingy. So the way how I explain